The hidden reality of divorce. What nobody talks about divorce is one of those experiences most people think they understand until they live it. But the truth is far more complex than the casual conversation suggests. When a marriage ends, especially a long-term one, the emotional and psychological fallout is profound, invisible, and often misunderstood. What people rarely realize is that the person leaving isn't just walking away from their spouse. They're stepping into an entirely new reality, a world that challenges their identity, their assumptions, and even the neural wiring of their brain. When a person leaves a long-term marriage, they leave behind a psychological ecosystem built over years. Every decision they made, every plan for the future, every emotional response was connected to the shared life they had built. Even complaints and arguments didn't erase this invisible web of dependence. The spouse they left, the home they shared, the routines they maintained, all of these were reference points that grounded their understanding of the world. The moment they exit this ecosystem, it disappears, and they are left floating in a state of emotional weightlessness. The initial stage after leaving is often euphoric. There's a honeymoon period, lasting anywhere from a few weeks to several months, where the newly single person feels exhilarated. She wakes up each day proud of her independence, congratulating herself mentally for having the courage to make such a bold choice. She might redecorate her home, sign up for activities she always wanted to try, or explore dating apps, curious about the possibilities out there. Friends reinforce this excitement, constantly validating her decision. You deserve better, look at you, glowing, unstoppable, free. In this phase, she's not living in reality, she's living in a carefully constructed story she tells herself. In her mind, she is the heroine who escaped mediocrity, and the world is brimming with endless opportunities. Attention from others, whether romantic or platonic, is interpreted as proof that she made the right choice. A new date, compliments, or flirtatious messages feed her sense of validation. But this early enthusiasm is often misleading. She is mistaking quantity for quality, novelty for depth, and surface-level attention for genuine emotional connection. Eventually, reality begins to intrude. The excitement of independence is tempered by encounters with the real world. A first serious date, seemingly perfect on paper, can suddenly reveal cracks. He might seem attractive, successful, and charming, but when it comes to the little things, the quirks, fears, or daily habits that once mattered, he falls short. Subconsciously, she starts comparing this new person to her ex, measuring experiences against what she had, even if she consciously maintains that leaving was the right choice. This comparison is inevitable. Brains are wired to recognize patterns, and the life she knew with you becomes the benchmark against which all new experiences are judged. As months pass, the initial thrill of freedom fades. Compliments start to feel hollow, the constant attention less intoxicating. Her friends who once cheered her on may drift away, married friends distancing themselves, single friends now competing in the same social or dating pool. Social life, once imagined as a broad, open horizon, begins to shrink. She experiences an unexpected loneliness, compounded by the realization that maintaining the performance of happiness requires enormous energy. Smiles, outings, and social media posts become exercises in acting, rather than genuine expressions of contentment. This stage brings deep internal reflection. She begins to question her decisions, rewriting history in her mind. Perhaps the marriage wasn't as bad as she told herself. Maybe she misjudged her spouse, or miscalculated the future. But admitting error threatens her very identity. She has constructed herself as the woman who was brave enough to leave, and acknowledging a mistake would dismantle the foundation of her social and psychological narrative. Instead, she invents alternative stories, hypothetical scenarios in which reconciliation could work without conceding that her original choice might have been wrong. The dating world brings its own harsh lessons for women who are divorced. especially those with children or in their mid-30s or older. The pool of suitable partners is smaller than imagined. Many potential partners may not have the emotional availability, intention, or stability that she needs. Rebound relationships, often pursued in a rush to avoid loneliness, frequently fail spectacularly. She meets someone, tries to force compatibility, or pushes for commitment too soon, only to face disappointment. In these moments, the ex-spouse lingers in her mind, not as an active presence but as a psychological benchmark. Every man she encounters is compared to the idealized version of you, shaped by regret and nostalgia, rather than the reality of who you were. Eventually, the defenses that shield her from the pain of her choices begin to crumble. Loneliness becomes acute, and the fantasy she constructed can no longer withstand the weight of reality. This can lead to obsessive attempts at self-reinvention. She changes appearance, style, and habits, hoping to succeed in a world that is more challenging than she anticipated. Yet no amount of outward transformation can compensate for the miscalculation she made in trading a real relationship for imagined possibilities. The heartache is compounded by the statistical realities of dating after divorce. Compatible, emotionally available, single men are limited, and competition is intense. Adjusting expectations feels impossible, and compromise can erode self-esteem. The social landscape shifts as well. Friendships, once a source of support, may reveal themselves as conditional. Married friends may distance themselves, feeling subtly threatened or simply moving on with their own lives. Single friends may become competitors in dating and social arenas. The result is a shrinking network and intensified isolation. The realization hits. The ex-spouse wasn't just a partner, they were also a friend, confidant, and safe space. Losing that connection is far more devastating than she anticipated. In addition, divorced women often experience what psychologists call phantom relationship syndrome. Similar to how amputees feel phantom limbs, the mind continues to perceive the presence of someone who is no longer there. She catches herself wanting to share moments, hearing your voice in her head, or briefly forgetting that you're gone, only to be reminded of the absence, creating repeated emotional pain. Everyday reminders, the favorite restaurant, a shared song, or something a child says, become psychological anchors, pulling her back to the reality she is trying to escape. As time passes, the cognitive and emotional burden intensifies. Maintaining the belief that leaving was the right decision while facing loneliness and disappointment produces cognitive dissonance, a conflict between incompatible thoughts that exhausts mental and emotional resources. Sleep, appetite, focus, and emotional stability can all suffer. Anxiety, depression, or emotional numbness may develop as the brain attempts to cope with the relentless internal conflict. The social performance of independence is particularly exhausting. Sunday nights in particular become a moment of reckoning. Without distractions, the reality of being alone sets in. There is no independence, freedom, or empowerment in that quiet moment, just stark loneliness. Meanwhile, the ex-spouse, having moved through their own stages of grief and adjustment, may be rebuilding and growing stronger, ironically becoming the person the ex-partner once wished they had been. Witnessing this, whether directly or indirectly, creates an invisible psychological torment, a realization that the life she imagined doesn't exist, and that her absence from the growth of her former partner is irreversible. The psychological evolution doesn't stop there. Women who leave long-term relationships must rebuild their identities from scratch. For years, every decision, from mundane choices to major life plans, was made within the context of being part of a couple. Leaving disrupts not only daily routines, but the very neural patterns that shaped her sense of self. Suddenly, seemingly small decisions, where to sleep, what to eat, what to watch, require conscious effort, reinforcing a profound sense of disorientation and loss. Eventually, there comes a moment of reckoning. She must confront a choice, continue the narrative she has constructed, or face the truth of her choices. Many double down on the narrative. It is simpler and less painful. She may become cynical, seek validation from online communities, or advise others to leave, reinforcing her own perspective. For those who choose honesty, the psychological challenge is immense: how to reconcile actions with identity, how to admit wrongdoing, and how to rebuild relationships when the foundation of her social and self-concept was built on a perceived moral high ground. In parallel, dating experiences illuminate harsh realities. The number of compatible, emotionally available, and willing men is limited, especially for those with children. Misjudging this leads to compromises that chip away at self-respect, desperate attempts at self-reinvention. New hair, new style, new personality can feel like rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. Even relationships that seem promising may collapse, leaving her emotionally depleted and reinforcing the ghostly presence of the ex-spouse in her mind. Throughout all of this, the ex-spouse becomes an idealized standard, not the person she knew, but the version shaped by memory and hindsight, a version she compares every new partner against. No one can compete with this constructed ideal, which haunts dating, self-esteem, and social interaction. Over the long term, two paths emerge. Some women continue to cultivate the fantasy, reinforcing bitterness or cynicism, while others face the challenge of acknowledging mistakes and rebuilding their lives honestly. The psychological weight of admitting error is immense, especially when identity has been constructed around being right. Yet the alternative, clinging to an illusion, carries its own ongoing cost: persistent dissatisfaction, emotional exhaustion, and a profound sense of what was lost. Ultimately, the experience of divorce reveals a profound psychological truth. Leaving a long-term relationship is not merely a change in circumstances, it is a radical upheaval of identity, social networks, and emotional patterns. The initial thrill of independence is often replaced by isolation and regret. Attempts to recreate happiness externally often fail because the real challenge lies internally: rebuilding self-concept, adjusting expectations, and confronting the consequences of choices. Meanwhile, the ex-spouse, having processed the stages of grief, learned from the past, and rebuilt life, may emerge stronger and more fulfilled. Ironically, the absence of the former partner catalyzes growth, producing a version of the person that may surpass what the other once imagined. This is the hidden truth of divorce. It is not merely separation, but a crucible of transformation, regret, and revelation. The journey is messy, painful, and often invisible, but it reshapes everyone involved, leaving lasting impressions on identity, relationships, and the perception of self-worth. Divorce, then, is a story of cognitive dissonance, social contraction, emotional recalibration, and identity reconstruction. It exposes the illusion of freedom and the harsh realities of starting over. It teaches that attention and validation do not equal fulfillment, that social circles can betray expectations, and that loss is not just emotional, it is neurological. The ex-spouse remains a silent presence, a benchmark against which all subsequent experiences are measured. For the person left behind, there is the paradoxical blessing of growth. The adversity of loss can forge resilience, self-awareness, and a more grounded perspective on life and relationships. In the end, divorce is far more than legal separation. It is a profound psychological journey that reshapes identities, tests self-perception, and reveals truths about human nature, attachment, and the complexities of love. The pain, the regret, and the cognitive recalibration are all part of a process that few discuss openly, but everyone experiences in one way or another. Understanding this reality is not just about predicting the behavior of an ex-spouse. It is about recognizing the universal struggle of rebuilding oneself after a world has shifted dramatically.